She was a quiet little girl who rarely spoke unless spoken to in her classroom. She often sat near the back, keeping her eyes on her books, and her hands folded neatly on the desk. She learned early that staying unnoticed made the day easier. Other children were louder, more confident, and quicker to raise their hands. She was different not because she lacked ability, but because she carried a gentle nature. Her home life was simple and modest. Her parents worked long hours and valued kindness, patience, and hard work. They did not have much money, but they made sure she felt safe and loved. Evenings were calm with shared meals and soft conversations. There was no talk of talent or ambition, only the importance of doing one's best. Music entered her life quietly. There was an old piano in her grandmother's house placed near a window that let in warm afternoon light. The keys were slightly worn and some sounded softer than others. When she was very young, she pressed a key and felt a strange comfort in the sound. It was not loud or impressive, but it stayed with her. Whenever the family visited, she would sit at the piano and play simple notes. No one paid much attention, and no one pushed her to learn. She taught herself by listening and repeating. She played not to perform, but to feel calm. At school, she struggled in a different way. Her teacher believed discipline was the most important lesson. Mistakes were corrected publicly, and silence was demanded. The classroom often felt tense, especially for children who were shy. The teacher noticed the little girl because of her quiet nature, not in a caring way, but as someone easy to control. When lessons involved music, the teacher expected obedience, not creativity. The classroom piano was used more as a tool than an instrument. One morning, during a music lesson, the teacher grew impatient. The class was restless, and attention was slipping. The teacher decided to make an example. Her eyes landed on the little girl sitting quietly. She was told to stand and come to the front. Her heart beat raced as she walked toward the piano. She did not understand why she had been chosen. Her hands felt cold, and her thoughts blurred. The teacher spoke, firmly telling her to play something on the piano. The tone suggested this was not a request, but a command. Some children began to whisper, others watched with curiosity. The little girl felt exposed and small. She tried to explain softly that she had never played at school before. Her voice barely carried across the room. The teacher dismissed her words and repeated the instruction. The intention was clear: to embarrass her and teach the class a lesson. She stood in front of the piano, feeling every eye on her. Her fingers hovered above the keys, unsure where to begin. She thought about the piano at her grandmother's house. She remembered the quiet afternoons and the sense of peace. The room felt heavy with expectation. Some children smiled, others looked away uncomfortable. The teacher crossed her arms, waiting. The little girl took a deep breath. She placed her fingers gently on the keys. At first, she planned to press only a few notes, something simple, just enough to obey and return to her seat. Her hands trembled slightly. As the first sound filled the room, something changed inside her. The noise of the classroom faded. She focused only on the piano, and the feeling it gave her. Her breathing slowed. She began to play the simple tune she knew by heart, the one she always played alone. The melody was soft and steady. It did not demand attention, yet it carried emotion. The children grew quieter, though they did not yet understand why. The teacher watched closely, expecting hesitation or mistakes. But the little girl continued. Her fingers moved with growing confidence. For the first time, she was not thinking about the room or the people. She was thinking about the music. It felt like speaking in a language she understood completely, a language that did not judge. Her shoulders relaxed, and her posture changed. The sound grew clearer and more assured. What began as obedience slowly became expression. The class different. The teacher shifted slightly, noticing the change. This was not what she expected. The tune was still simple, but it held something deeper. It felt sincere. The little girl did not look up. She stayed with the piano, letting the notes guide her. She was no longer trying to finish quickly. She was playing the way she always did, when no one was watching. In that moment, the attempt to humiliate her lost its power. Something quiet and unexpected was beginning. The class was no longer watching to laugh. They were listening. This was only the beginning. No one yet understood what was unfolding, but the atmosphere in the room had already changed, and the little girl felt it too. If any dots or ellipses appear, rewrite the content. Without them, as she continued to play the simple tune, her hands slowly stopped shaking. The piano keys felt familiar under her fingers, like the ones she had touched so many times in quiet afternoons. Her mind returned to those moments when no one was watching and nothing was expected. That memory gave her comfort. The melody flowed gently at first, and then with more certainty. Each note connected naturally to the next. She was not thinking about being judged or corrected. She was simply playing. The classroom grew noticeably quieter. The whispers stopped, and chairs no longer shifted. Some children leaned forward. Without realizing it, others sat completely still, listening. The teacher stood frozen near the board. Her expression began to change from impatience to confusion. This was not the awkward moment she had planned. There were no wrong notes, no pauses, no fear. The little girl added a slight change to the melody. It was something she always did. When she felt safe, the sound grew warmer and fuller. It carried feeling, not just sound. A boy in the front row, who often joked during lessons, sat with his mouth slightly open. He had never heard anything like this before. A girl near the window clasped her hands together. The room felt different, calmer. The little girl was no longer aware of the class. She did not see the teacher or the students. She only felt the piano responding to her touch. Her breathing was steady. She began to play with more confidence. Her fingers moved smoothly across the keys. The tune expanded naturally, guided by instinct. It was still simple, but it felt complete. The teacher shifted her weight and cleared her throat. She expected the girl to stop, but the music continued. The sound filled the room gently, but firmly. It demanded attention without asking. The chalkboard behind the piano desks around them faded into the background. Time felt slower, As if the moment stretched, no one interrupted, no one laughed. Some children exchanged quiet glances. They did not understand how someone so quiet could create something so powerful. They had always seen her as invisible, now they were seeing her differently. The teacher felt a tightening in her chest. She realized that control had slipped from her grasp. The lesson she intended to teach was unraveling. The power in the room had shifted. The little girl felt a warmth spread through her hands and arms. This feeling was familiar but stronger than before. She felt brave without knowing why. She felt aloud. She played a section that carried more emotion. It reflected the loneliness she sometimes felt, the softness of her home, the calm she found in music. The sound touched something in the room. A girl in the back blinked rapidly, holding back tears. A child who struggled with reading felt a strange sense of comfort. The music spoke in ways words never had. The teacher stepped closer to the piano. She listened carefully. Now her face showed surprise mixed with discomfort. She did not speak. The little girl continued, unaware of the reaction she was creating. She was not performing, she was expressing something honest. Her fingers pressed the keys with purpose. The melody rose slightly, then settled. It felt like a story being told, a quiet story, but a real one. The classroom felt united in silence. Every student was listening. The usual tension was gone. In its place was attention. The teacher noticed that she had lost the room, not through chaos, but through stillness. She felt exposed in a way she did not expect. The child she meant to embarrass was teaching. Instead, the little girl returned to the main theme of the tune now. It sounded different, richer, and more confident, like it had grown. Her shoulders were relaxed, her face calm. She looked nothing like the frightened child who had walked to the piano moments earlier. She looked focused and strong. The music slowed slightly as she approached She felt the moment coming. She softened her touch, letting the sound linger. When the final note faded, she kept her hands resting on the keys. The room remained silent. No one moved, no one spoke. The teacher opened her mouth, then closed it again. She did not know what to say. This was not part of the plan. The power she held moments ago felt distant. The children waited. Some held their breath, others felt a strange heaviness in their chest. They had just experienced something unexpected. The little girl slowly lifted her hands from the keys. She sat still, unsure what to do next. She felt exposed again, but also steady. She had done what she always did. For a brief moment, no one reacted. Then one child began to clap softly. Another followed. Soon the sound filled the room. The applause was hesitant at first, then stronger. It was not loud or wild, it was sincere. The little girl turned, slightly startled by the sound. She had never been applauded before. She did not smile. She simply looked down. The teacher raised her hand and the clapping stopped. She cleared her throat and spoke stiffly. She told the class to return to their seats. Her voice lacked authority. The little girl stood and walked back to her desk. Her legs felt light. Her heart was still beating fast, but she felt taller somehow as she sat down. She felt eyes on her, not mocking eyes, curious ones. The class resumed, but nothing felt the same. The lesson continued, but the atmosphere had changed. The children whispered less. They looked at her differently. The teacher avoided looking at her. She focused on the board and spoke quickly. The power dynamic had shifted quietly, but completely. The little girl opened her notebook. Her hands were still warm. She felt something new inside her, a sense of worth. She did not yet understand what had happened. She only knew that music had protected her. It had spoken when she could not. This was no longer just a memory from home. This moment belonged to the classroom now, and nothing would be the same again. After the class ended, the children began packing their bags more slowly than usual. The room buzzed with quiet energy and unspoken thoughts. Several students glanced at the little girl, then quickly looked away. No one laughed or teased. Something had shifted. The little girl stayed seated, arranging her books carefully. She moved the same way she always did, but inside she felt different. Her chest felt lighter and her thoughts clearer. When the bell rang, the class filed out. A few children walked past her desk and whispered her name. One girl gave her a small, shy smile. A boy nodded at her with new respect. She did not know how to respond. She returned the smile softly and kept her eyes down. Attention still felt unfamiliar, but it no longer felt dangerous. The teacher remained at her desk, pretending to organize papers. She avoided looking directly at the little girl. Her posture was stiff and controlled. The moment at the piano still lingered in her mind. After the room emptied, the teacher finally spoke. Her voice was quieter than usual. She told the little girl she could leave. There was no apology and no praise. The little girl nodded and walked out. Her steps echoed in the hallway. She felt both relieved and confused. She wondered if she had done something wrong at home. That afternoon, she went straight to the piano. She sat down and played the same tune again. It sounded different now, stronger and more confident. Her mother listened from the kitchen. She noticed the change immediately. She came closer and watched quietly. When the girl finished, her mother hugged her tightly. The little girl tried to explain what happened at school. The words came slowly. Her mother listened without interrupting. Her face showed concern and pride. Her mother told her she did nothing wrong. She told her that music was a gift and gifts should never be used to shame. Those words stayed with the little girl. They settled deep inside her. The next day at school, the atmosphere felt strange. The classroom was quieter. The children seemed more aware of one another. The teacher was more distant. During the music lesson, the teacher avoided calling on her. Instead, she focused on the board and the book. The piano remained untouched. The tension was subtle but present. At recess, a group of children gathered near the swings. They asked the little girl if she had learned piano lessons. She shook her head and said she played at home. They looked surprised. One child asked if she could teach them. The idea startled her. She had never imagined herself teaching anything. She said maybe someday. Over the next few days, the little girl noticed small changes. Children included her in conversations. They asked her questions. They listened. When she spoke, she still remained quiet, but she no longer felt invisible. Her presence felt acknowledged. That recognition brought a new sense of safety. The teacher, on the other hand, seemed unsettled. She corrected mistakes less harshly, she spoke more carefully. It was as if she was aware that her authority had been challenged during another class. The teacher mentioned an upcoming school assembly students would be asked to share skills and projects. The teacher paused briefly, then continued speaking. She did not look at the little girl. The little girl felt a flutter in her chest. She wondered if music would be part of the assembly. The thought scared her and excited her at the same time. She said nothing at home. She practiced more intentionally, not because she was told to, but because she wanted to understand what had happened. She explored new melodies and variations. Music became a place of strength rather than just comfort. She noticed how different emotions shaped her playing. Joy made it lighter, sadness made it deeper. Her parents noticed her growing confidence. She spoke a little more at dinner. She asked questions. She shared thoughts. One evening her father suggested she might like formal lessons. She listened quietly. The idea felt both exciting and frightening. She asked if she had to perform. Her father said no. He said lessons were about learning, not showing off. That reassurance eased her fear. She agreed to try at school. The teacher continued to avoid direct interaction, but the children did not. They invited her to sit with them. They defended her when others spoke harshly. The little girl began to understand something important. Her value did not come from pleasing authority. It came from being true to herself. Music had revealed that the classroom dynamic continued to change. The teacher could sense it. Her control felt less absolute. She became more careful with her words. One afternoon, a substitute teacher led the music lesson. She noticed the piano. Immediately she asked if anyone could play. The room grew quiet. Several children turned to look at the little girl. She felt her face warm. The substitute teacher noticed the looks and smiled. She invited the little girl forward gently. This time there was no force, no command, just invitation. The little girl stood slowly and walked to the piano. Her steps were steady. She felt nervous, but not afraid. She placed her hands on the keys and began to play. The music flowed easily. The class listened again. In silence, the substitute teacher watched with admiration. She thanked the little girl afterward. She said the music was beautiful. The praise felt genuine. When the regular teacher returned the next day, she noticed the shift immediately. The children were different. They were more attentive and respectful. She glanced at the piano, then at the little girl. Their eyes met briefly. The teacher looked away first. The little girl understood something. Then the moment of humiliation had transformed into a moment of truth. The power had changed hands, not through rebellion, but through honesty. She returned to her seat feeling calm. She knew there would still be challenges, but she also knew she had something strong inside her. Music was no longer just a secret, it was a voice, and it had been heard as weeks passed. The memory of that first moment at the piano did not fade. It settled quietly into the rhythm of school life and continued shaping it. The little girl returned to her routines, but she carried herself with subtle confidence. She still spoke softly, but her silence no longer felt empty. Music lessons continued, yet they felt different now. The teacher followed the curriculum more strictly and avoided sudden displays of authority. She no longer used students as examples. The classroom felt calmer, though the tension had not fully disappeared. The little girl noticed how carefully the teacher chose her words. Instructions were shorter and corrections less sharp. The change was not an apology, but it was noticeable. Power in the room felt more balanced. At home, piano lessons began with a local instructor. The woman was kind, patient, and attentive. She asked the little girl to play whatever she liked. When the girl played the familiar tune, the instructor listened closely. She said the child had natural musical sensitivity, not just skill, but feeling. She explained that this could be nurtured gently over time. The little girl felt seen without pressure. Lessons became a highlight of the week. They were not rushed and never full. The instructor encouraged curiosity and expression. Mistakes were treated as part of learning. The little girl began practicing with new purpose. She was not chasing approval. She was exploring what music could become. Each session brought small discoveries. At school, word spread slowly beyond the classroom. Other students heard about the piano moment. Some asked questions, others simply watched. The little girl did not seek attention. One afternoon, a teacher from another class asked her to play during a break. The request was gentle and respectful. She hesitated, then agreed. A small group gathered quietly. She played a short piece. The reaction was warm and encouraging. She felt proud but not overwhelmed. This was different from the first time. Her confidence grew through repetition. Each time she played publicly, the fear lessened. She learned how to steady her breathing, how to focus on the keys instead of the faces. The original teacher watched these moments from a distance. She never intervened. Her expression was thoughtful, restrained. It was clear that something within her had shifted. The school announced an upcoming assembly. Students were invited to share projects, talents, or stories. Participation was voluntary. The room buzzed with excitement. Several children encouraged the little girl to participate. They believed in her. She listened quietly. The idea filled her with mixed feelings. At home, she talked with her parents. They listened carefully and asked what she wanted. She said she was scared, but also curious. They supported her decision. Either way, after days of thought, she agreed to play, not to prove anything, but to share something meaningful. She chose a piece that felt honest. Preparation was careful, but calm. She practiced consistently and rested when needed. Her instructor reminded her to enjoy the process. The words helped. The day of the assembly arrived. The school hall was full of students, teachers, and parents. The stage felt large. The piano sat waiting. As she waited, her heart beat quickly. She reminded herself of the quiet afternoons. Her grandmother's house. She remembered the first sound that brought comfort. That memory steadied her when her name was called. She walked onto the stage. The lights were bright, but not blinding. The audience quieted. She sat at the piano. She placed her hands on the keys and paused briefly. Then she began. The music flowed with gentle strength. The hall listened in silence. The piece was not flashy. It was sincere and expressive. The little girl felt present. She was not thinking about judgment. She was simply sharing a part Of herself when she finished. Applause filled the hall. It was warm and supportive. She stood and bowed quickly, her face flushed. She returned to her seat feeling light. Her parents smiled proudly. Her instructor nodded encouragingly. The original teacher clapped as well. Her expression was composed. There was no sign of resentment, only quiet acknowledgement. After the assembly, several adults approached the little girl. They praised her music and her courage. She thanked them politely. She felt tired but happy. Classroom. The atmosphere shifted further. Students treated one another with more respect. The little girl noticed fewer harsh words and fewer jokes at others' expense. Music had softened something. The teacher addressed the class one morning. She spoke about respect and listening. Her tone was calm. The lesson felt sincere. The little girl listened carefully. She understood that change does not always come with words. Sometimes it comes through experience. Her music continued to grow. She learned new pieces and explored new emotions. Joy, sadness, curiosity, and hope all found space in sound. She remained humble. She remembered how quickly things could change. She valued kindness over praise. The memory of being forced to play had transformed. It was no longer a source of fear. It had become a turning point. The little girl understood something important. Talent does not need permission, and truth has a quiet strength. She returned to the piano each day with gratitude for the keys, for the sound, for the courage she had found. Her journey was still beginning, but she was no longer afraid to be seen. Music had given her a voice, and she was learning how to use it. As the school year moved forward, the little girl settled into a new rhythm. Her days felt fuller yet calmer. She balanced school lessons, friendships, and music with quiet care. Nothing felt rushed. Her piano lessons continued steadily. The instructor introduced more challenging pieces, but never pushed too hard. She explained how technique and emotion worked together. The little girl listened closely. She practiced daily, not out of obligation, but curiosity. Each session revealed something new. A softer touch created warmth. A stronger press brought intensity. Music became a way to understand herself when she felt overwhelmed. She played slowly when she felt joyful. The melody lifted. The piano responded honestly. At school, teachers began to notice her confidence. She raised her hand occasionally. She spoke clearly when she had something to say. Her voice no longer shook. Classmates treated her with respect. They included her in group work and conversations. Some asked about her lessons. Others simply enjoyed her company. The original teacher remained reserved. She maintained distance, but was no longer harsh. Her tone stayed neutral. The tension between them faded quietly. One afternoon, during a free period, the teacher asked the little girl to stay behind. The request caused a brief flutter of worry, but the teacher spoke calmly. She said she wanted to apologize. The words were simple and measured. She admitted that her behavior had been wrong. She said she had underestimated the child. The apology was brief, but sincere. The little girl listened quietly. She nodded and said thank you. She did not feel anger, only relief. That moment closed a chapter. The memory of humiliation finally released its hold. Understanding replaced fear. Respect replaced control. Outside the classroom, opportunities continued to appear. A local community center offered a small recital. The little girl was invited to participate. Her parents discussed it with her. She agreed cautiously. The idea of a new audience still felt intimidating, but she trusted herself more now. She chose a piece that felt safe. The recital space was small and warm. Families filled the room. There was no pressure to impress, only a shared love of music. When it was her turn, she walked to the piano steadily. She took a breath and began. The music flowed naturally. The audience listened quietly. Some smiled, others closed their eyes. The room felt connected. Afterward, people thanked her. They spoke gently and kindly. She felt proud, but grounded. This felt right at home. She reflected on how far she had come. She remembered the fear of that first classroom moment. Now she felt steady. Music no longer felt fragile. Her parents noticed her growth. They supported her without pushing. They encouraged balance. They reminded her to rest. She continued excelling academically. Music did not distract her. It sharpened her focus. She felt more engaged. Her friendships deepened. She listened carefully and spoke honestly. She supported others quietly. Kindness became her strength. The little girl composing short melodies, nothing complex, just expressions of feeling. Her instructor encouraged this. Writing music felt different from playing. It required reflection and patience. She enjoyed the process. It felt personal. One piece reflected her early fear. Another captured calm. Another held joy. Each melody told part of her story. She shared one composition during a lesson. The instructor listened closely. She praised the emotion and structure. The little girl felt encouraged. At school, music became her identity, not in a loud way, but in a steady one. People associated her with calm and creativity. The teacher now treated music lessons with more care. She allowed space for listening. She invited participation rather than control. The classroom felt transformed. The little girl observed this change quietly. She understood that growth happens in many ways, sometimes slowly, sometimes unexpectedly. She no longer defined herself by that single moment. It was part of her story, but not all of it. She had grown beyond it. She felt capable. As summer approached, she looked ahead with curiosity. She wondered what music would become for her, a hobby, a passion, or something more. She did not rush to decide. She trusted time. She trusted herself. Music remained her companion through calm days and uncertain ones. It grounded her. It guided her. She understood now that talent is not just skill. It is sensitivity, courage, and honesty. Those qualities shaped her journey. The little girl smiled more easily. She walked with quiet confidence. She knew who she was becoming. What began as an attempt to humiliate her had revealed her strength, not through defiance, but through truth. Her story continued quietly, built on patience and care, guided by sound, and carried forward with confidence. As the next school year began, the little girl stepped into it with a sense of calm readiness. She was still gentle and quiet, but there was strength beneath her softness. She no longer felt the need to shrink herself. Her confidence was Steady rather than loud, her music lessons continued and gradually became more advanced. She learned how to read music more deeply and understand structure. Her instructor guided her carefully, encouraging patience and curiosity. The little girl absorbed everything with focused practice, became a natural part of her day. She organized her time without being told. She understood the value of consistency. Music felt like a trusted routine at school. She joined a small music club formed by a newt. The group met once a week after classes. Students shared instruments, ideas, and simple performances. The environment was supportive and respectful. At first, she listened more than she played. She observed how others expressed themselves. Over time, she began to contribute quietly. Her presence added calm to the group. Other students noticed her ability to listen deeply. They sought her opinion. They respected her honesty. She felt valued in a new way. The memory of being forced to play in front of the class felt distant now. It no longer carried fear. It had become part of her foundation, a reminder of how she found her voice. The original teacher had moved to another grade. They rarely crossed paths. When they did, there was a polite distance. No tension remained. One afternoon, the school announced a district-wide cultural event. Selected students would represent their schools. Music, art, and storytelling were all included. Teachers were asked to recommend students. Her music instructor submitted her name. Decisions surprised the little girl. She felt honored and nervous. She talked about it with her parents. They encouraged her to try. They reminded her that participation mattered more than outcome. That reassurance helped. She agreed. Preparation for the event took several weeks. She worked closely with her instructor, choosing a piece that reflected her journey. It began simply and grew more expressive. It felt personal and honest. She practiced carefully, focusing on clarity and feeling. She paid attention to breathing and posture. She learned how to recover from small mistakes. These skills gave her confidence. The day of the event arrived with excitement and tension. Students from different schools filled the venue. The room felt large and unfamiliar. She felt her heart race. Backstage, she closed her eyes and imagined her piano at home, the worn keys and quiet space. That image calmed her. She took a deep breath. When her turn came, she walked onto the stage steadily. The piano waited under bright lights. She sat down and placed her hands on the keys. The noise around her faded. She began to play. The opening was gentle and controlled. The sound filled the room clearly. She felt connected and present. As the piece progressed, the emotion deepened. She allowed herself to feel fully. The music carried strength and warmth. The audience listened intently. She was no longer thinking about being judged. She was sharing something real. The stage felt safe. Her body relaxed. When the final notes faded, the room remained silent for a moment. Then applause rose. It was strong and sincere. She stood and bowed calmly. Afterwards, several teachers approached her. They praised her musicality and composure. She thanked them politely. She felt tired, but fulfilled. The experience taught her something important. She could carry her voice into new spaces. Fear did not disappear, but it no longer controlled her. She trusted herself. Back at school, her classmates congratulated her. They asked questions and listened. She shared her experience simply. She did not exaggerate. Music continued to shape her daily life. She explored new styles and techniques. She listened to different composers. Her curiosity expanded. She also became more aware of others' struggles. She noticed quiet students who felt unseen. She offered kindness without drawing attention. She understood how much that mattered. Her parents noticed her maturity. She handled challenges with patience. She spoke openly about her feelings. Music had helped her develop emotional balance. As months passed, she began thinking about the future, not with pressure but curiosity. She wondered how music might fit into her life long term. She did not rush to define it. Her instructor reminded her that paths unfold naturally, that dedication opens doors, that honesty sustains growth. Those words stayed with her. The little girl understood now that her talent was not something to hide, nor something to prove. It was something to nurture, something to share. When the time felt right, she returned often to the simple tune that began everything. Each time it sounded different, shaped by experience and growth. It reminded her of her journey. She felt gratitude for the challenge that once frightened her. It had revealed her strength. It had changed her direction. It had taught her trust. Her story continued quietly, built on patience, learning, and courage. Music remained her companion, and her voice remained her own. As time moved forward, the little girl grew into her role with quiet assurance. She was no longer surprised by her own abilities. She understood them as something earned through patience and care. This understanding brought stability. Her days were balanced between school responsibilities, friendships, and music. She managed her time with intention. She knew when to practice and when to rest. This balance protected her joy. The music club became an important space for her. New students joined, and others moved on. She remained a steady presence. She helped create an atmosphere of respect. When younger students felt nervous, she spoke to them gently. She showed them how to breathe before playing. She reminded them that mistakes were part of learning. Her words carried. Experienced teachers noticed her leadership, not through loud direction, but through example. She listened carefully and responded thoughtfully. People trusted her. Outside school, she continued lessons with dedication. Her instructor introduced collaborative playing, duets, and small ensembles, challenged her in new ways. She learned to listen as much as she played. Collaboration taught her flexibility. She adjusted her timing and touch to match others. She learned that music was a shared language. This deepened her understanding. Her confidence extended beyond music. She participated more in class discussions. She volunteered for group projects. Her voice was clear and calm. The memory of being forced to play no longer held pain. It had transformed into a lesson. She understood power dynamics and empathy. She carried that awareness carefully. One afternoon, a new student joined the music club. The child was shy and hesitant. The little girl recognized the familiar fear. She approached slowly and offered support. She invited the student to sit beside her at the piano. They played simple notes together. The shared sound eased the tension. A small smile appeared. Moments like these affirmed her growth. She saw how far she had come. She was no longer just learning, she was helping others find courage at home. She began exploring composition more seriously. She wrote short pieces inspired by everyday moments. Rain against the window. Quiet mornings, shared laughter. Her instructor encouraged this direction. She explained that composing strengthened musical identity. The little girl embraced the challenge. She refined her ideas patiently. One composition was chosen for a small recital. The piece was modest, but expressive. Performing her own work felt vulnerable. But she trusted the process. The recital audience listened closely. They responded warmly. The experience affirmed her creative voice. She felt proud and grounded. Her parents supported her growth without pressure. They celebrated milestones. Quietly, they valued her happiness over achievement. This support sustained her as she grew older. She began mentoring younger students formally. She assisted her instructor during beginner lessons. She demonstrated techniques and encouraged curiosity. Teaching deepened her understanding. She learned how to explain concepts simply. She learned patience when progress was slow. She saw herself reflected in others' journeys. This brought empathy. School challenges still appeared. Academic pressure, social changes, and uncertainty were part of life. She met these with resilience. Music provided grounding. She understood that setbacks did not erase progress. They offered opportunities to learn. This mindset shaped her decisions. She felt capable. A regional youth music gathering invited her to participate. This time, she was not chosen unexpectedly. She was invited intentionally. The distinction mattered. She prepared thoughtfully, not striving for perfection, but aiming for clarity and honesty. Her focus remained steady. The performance went smoothly. She felt present and connected. Applause followed. But what stayed with her was the sense of alignment. She reflected on her journey afterward, from fear to confidence, from silence to voice. The transformation felt meaningful. She understood that her story could inspire others, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. She honored that responsibility. As adolescence approached, she faced new questions: identity, future, purpose surfaced. She did not rush answers. She trusted time. Music remained central, but not exclusive. She explored other interests. She remained curious. Balance guided her choices. She knew now that talent alone was not enough. Character mattered. Kindness, discipline, and honesty shaped success. These values guided her. The simple tune that once stunned a classroom still lived within her. It reminded her of humility, of beginnings, of courage. She carried that tune forward quietly into new spaces and experiences. It grounded her. It guided her. Her journey was not defined by a single moment, but by consistent choices: to be true, to be kind. She stepped into the next phase of her life with calm confidence. Music beside her voice, steady, heart open. As she continued growing, the meaning of music in her life became clearer and calmer. It was no longer tied to fear or surprise. It was simply part of who she was, a steady presence that shaped her choices. She moved through her later school years with quiet confidence. Teachers respected her focus and maturity. Classmates trusted her kindness. She did not seek attention, yet she was noticed. Music followed her naturally into each new space. She played at small school events, community gatherings, and informal settings. Each time she felt grounded rather than anxious. The piano felt like home. She no longer measured success by applause. What mattered was honesty. Playing in a way that felt true. That sense of alignment guided her. The memory of the day she was forced still existed, but it no longer carried pain. It had transformed into a reminder of how strength can appear quietly. She understood now that humiliation loses power when met with authenticity, that talent does not need permission to exist, that truth has its own voice, and it speaks when allowed. As she grew older, younger students often asked about her journey. She shared it carefully, not to dramatize it, but to offer reassurance. She told them that fear does not mean weakness, that being quiet does not mean being small, that strength can be gentle. Her words carried lived experience. She continued composing music. Her pieces became more reflective and intentional. They carried space and restraint. She valued meaning over complexity. Some of her compositions were shared online quietly. They reached people she had never met. Messages arrived describing comfort and calm. She felt grateful. She did not chase recognition. She accepted it when it came, always returning to her values. Balance guided her. Her parents watched her with pride. They remembered the shy child who once avoided attention. Now they saw someone steady and self-aware. Their support remained constant. She made choices about her future thoughtfully. Music remained central, but not limiting. She explored education, collaboration, and service. She wanted a life with depth. She understood that passion can coexist with practicality, that creativity thrives with care, that sustainability matters. These insights shaped her path. The piano continued to be her companion through moments of joy, uncertainty, and growth. She returned to it often, not to prove anything. When she played the simple tune that began everything, it sounded different each time, shaped by years of experience. It carried history. Listeners still felt something when they heard it, not because it was impressive, but because it was honest. That honesty endured. She reflected often on how one moment changed direction, not because of cruelty, but because of courage. Hers, she had chosen to play fully rap. Then retreat. That choice revealed her voice and reshaped how others saw her, including herself. Her life unfolded steadily, marked by consistency. Rather than spectacle, she learned that fulfillment grows quietly through intention. She never forgot the importance of empathy. She noticed those who felt unseen. She offered encouragement without drawing attention. Kindness guided her actions. Music gave her language when words failed. It connected her to others without forcing expression. It allowed her to remain herself. In change, she understood now that her story was not about being stunned. It was about being seen by herself first. Then by others, the moment meant to humiliate her had lost all power. In its place stood confidence and clarity. She carried that forward into each new chapter. Her journey did not end. It continued, naturally shaped by curiosity, growth, and care. Music beside her. And when she sat at the piano, now hands resting gently on the keys, she felt gratitude for the quiet strength that had always been there.